I'm Suzi Landolfi, and welcome to Be Crazy Well. Now, why would a therapist say that? Because we all have mental health struggles, even therapists. The good news is we have so much more information about how we can be crazy well. On my podcast, we don't focus on what's wrong with us. We want to know what happened to us. We're going to explore how trauma affected us, both negatively and positively. That's right. I said positively. It's called post-traumatic growth, and it's a real thing. Be Crazy Well will share mental health wellness practices, the newest mental health research, and most importantly, how we all get to create the person we deserve to be and the life we deserve to live. So join the mental health evolution and be crazy well. So, Ted, you sent me more information, and you're old enough to remember this, than an Encyclopedia Britannica. You remember those salespeople coming to the door with the
I
encyclopedia?
do, but see, my version was more succinct, although comprehensive. Because
Yes.
that one document was only 14 pages. And
Oh,
that basically was the foundation for my book. So that was like my book condensed into 14 pages.
that was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And I want to give you credit where credit's due. Few people do that. They don't necessarily, what I would like to say, do their homework. They don't do the research. I was just talking to someone today. I was talking to a retired police officer who was also military. And he came up with all these thoughts and feelings. And I said, but you haven't done enough evidence. You haven't collected enough evidence. You're a police officer. You got to go back and collect evidence and talk to people. And it was almost like the light bulb went off and he went, you're right. I'm just making assumptions and I haven't used this wonderful superpower I have. And before we even continue, I want everybody to know who you are. And they know who I am. They know that I'm the crazy lady that calls her podcast Be Crazy Well. Like, I'm not interested in stopping people from being crazy. I'm just not. I want you to do it well if you're going to do it. So Ted, tell us, name, a little bit about yourself. So because I want to get right into the mission. I want to get right into your book and what you're doing and what you've done already and to help so many of veterans and taking on the VA, because that's what you've done. And you didn't do it from resentment or from a place of, I'll show them. You did it because you wanted to help them and the people they serve. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. Some people just want to fight. And that's not what happened for you. You were in the system, helping the system. So, but first of all, tell everybody your full name, who you are, your military background, so they get a little sense.
Yeah, I'm Ted Blickwedel. I'm a retired Marine and combat veteran. I was in the Marine Corps over a 27-year period and did intermittent active duty periods over that 27-year period. I didn't actually do active duty day in and day out for 27 years in a row. I was in a program called Active Duty Special Works where I did my active duty time, and that's where I had assignments mostly overseas during that time. And I retired in 2006 and went back to school, got another master's degree in clinical social work, and ended up working for the VA in the Vet Center program where I did individual and group therapy with combat veterans.
And where was this locally?
This was in Warwick, Rhode Island.
Okay. And I want everybody to know that I'm from Boston. We consider Rhode Island part of Boston. Like we're good like that. And I was with him and he knows all this language, like Wicked Pissa and go to the Packy to get some beers and the lobster. He knows the whole thing, and Dunkin' Donuts. So I was so impressed. And we actually allow you as Rhode Islanders to be massholes if you want. Like that's what we call ourselves in Massachusetts. And you are honorary from Rhode Island. So I just want everybody to know that. So you're from my area that I still love, and you're still there. Did you grow up there?
No, actually, I grew up in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
I came here in 1983 after my first tour in the Marine Corps, before I went into the reserves. And of course, subsequent to that, already being here, is when I ended up into the individual Red Reserves, out of which where I did the active duty special works assignments for extended periods of active duty for the remainder of my career in the Marine Corps until 2006.
What made you want to become a licensed clinical social worker and work in the vet centers? What was that drive, that passion?
Basically, because of experience I had during one of my periods of broken time in the Marine Corps between 2001 and 2003. I worked for a nonprofit mental health agency that also did substance abuse counseling. So I was doing dual treatment, both with addictions and with mental health. And I was very fortunate because that particular agency actually was a very healthy agency. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do based on that experience, because while in the Marine Corps, I was part of what was called CRADO, the Chaplains Religious Education and Development Operations, where we would do 3.5, 4-day personal growth retreats with military members and their families in remote locations. And I was doing that between Okinawa and Groton, Connecticut, during my back and forth of my active duty assignments. And from that experience, I realized that this is something I wanted to move into. I kind of knew that even before that, but that 2-year experience at the Stanley Street Treatment and Resources between 2001 and 2003 really kind of galvanized that life after the Marine Corps. This is definitely something I wanted to do. I had a very good experience there, and in a healthy system where I had good role models and a good system model on how things should be.
Boy,
Because
when
that's not.
when a mental health program actually does their work, like when the system actually models the work that you're asking people to do in order to create the life they deserve, the person they deserve to be in the life, what a blessing, right?
Oh,
So
it
it's
was
not
incredible. I
yeah,
was very fortunate because, most agencies, even back then, were starting to, get into the HMO model, types of stuff, and the business model types of things. And had I had that experience, or with people that weren't good role models, I probably, would have had it left a very bad taste in my mouth, and I probably would not have pursued that. But I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
well, the medical model, and my listeners have heard me say this many times, is, we're supposed to take the Hippocratic Oath. And I say, no, we take the hypocritical oath. And we can be hypocrites. We can ask you to do stuff, change stuff, and not have to do it ourselves. I just went to the doctor's office just a few minutes ago to have something worked on and help me. And my doctor was hearing impaired. She was amazing. And we talked about the work that she does for herself to be a great doctor, not the work she does for everybody else. So here's what I just realized about you. You're a man in the service of service. You're not just in the service, you're a man of service. So whether you're in the service or out of the service, you're still going to be serving. Is that fair to say about you?
That's yeah, that's fine. I never thought about that, but that's kind of how it is. Yeah.
That's what happens when you talk to psychiatrists. And I mean, I'm not even that, like when you talk to a psychotherapist. Don't talk to the other two. I'm just kidding. I know some very good psychiatrists and very good psychologists. And I also know some therapists like you've discovered that are struggling themselves. But mostly it's a system that struggles, that doesn't do the work that they're asking their staff to do and their clients to do. So let's get into that, because that's so important. And it's why I wanted to talk to you and learn from you. And thank you. So you have this wonderful experience with a nonprofit mental health system, and you just, with your enthusiasm, go into the vet center world thinking, what?
Thinking that, it's going to be a great place to work. I'd be doing the same things in the same way I did when I was working at Stanley Street Treatment and Resources, which, by the way, when I went into the vet center program, working at the Warwick Vet Center. That was in 2009. So that was really only 6 short years after I'd been at Stanley Street Treatment Resources. And at that time, the Vet Center program did not have all of these excessive administrative mandates and visit counts. I mean, they had a standard of direct service that was reasonable, given all the administrative duties you had to do. And it was a great atmosphere. People loved their work and did great things for veterans and made a difference in veterans' lives. And everyone loved it there. And until things started to change about 7 years later.
Okay. So now you're in it for 7 years. People are doing great work as clinicians. People are appreciating it, the people that they serve. And what happened? What was the inciting, as we like to say, the inciting incident that sort of pushed, you said, whoa, wait a minute, something just shifted. What happened?
The incinerary incident was in 2016. They came out under the direction of the new chief of operations, the chief of the readjustment counseling service, which is the same thing as the Vet Center program, Mike Fisher. He instituted these visit counts that we were now required to see, not just have direct service time of 50-60% of direct service, face-to-face time with clients, but he was saying that we needed to have 30 visits per week. And there were basically threats, if you will, in documents that I had forwarded to me from another district, basically saying that, if we don't meet these standards, then we're going to be counseled. And eventually, if we still don't, then we end up going to HR for administrative action, which is basically means they're setting you up to be fired. So this did not sit well with people. People were having trouble, struggling, because when you talk about the average in the industry seeing someone one-to-one, you're talking 50 to 60 minutes on the hour. If you do 30 visits a week, your direct service time has now just jumped from 50% to 75% just to meet the visit count. But then they say, oh, but wait a minute, you can do more groups. And if you do more groups, you get more credit for the number of visits of people in a group. And, and so trying to push people, to do more groups when groups are very helpful, it's very therapeutic. But in some cases, in some vet centers, the way things are structured and the clientele they have in different regions, you can only do so many groups. Right. And there comes a time when, it's not constructive when you're forcing yourself to do groups, to do the numbers, when the nature of the group may not necessarily be therapeutically focused just to get the numbers. And then there was the pressure I heard from a lot of counselors across the country as I kind of reached out to them, saying that they had difficulty meeting the numbers. They were going on extended FMLA leave, going on, antidepressants, anxiety medication, seeing their own counselors, taking time off, and get to the point where eventually people started, looking for work, and eventually this created a high turnover problem, which exists to this day. So all this sort of culminated, going into 2017, we were really feeling the heat, with this. I couldn't meet the numbers because I refused to compromise quality care and give people the time that they needed, that I saw that was on my caseload. And consequently, I finally gave notice in 2017 in September at a staff meeting when an assistant regional director, district manager was there, who I said, and unanimously everyone agreed, this is unreasonable, that this is not, helping the situation, is compromising quality care, and we're burning out. And he said, Dale Willis is his name, Deputy District 1 Director at the time, he goes, I've I've heard this from everyone. I hear this everywhere I go. Okay. So nothing's being done about it. They do these site visits. We give feedback, but what happens to this feedback? Does it ever reach the top? And if it does, do they ever do anything about it? And basically, since it's by word of mouth, from us and to these site visits, and then maybe some questionnaires we hang out, what happens to these questionnaires? If they see something they don't like, what happens to those? I mean, there's no transparency.
Right.
So eventually what happened was, I ended up giving my notice in September 2017, basically explaining in that same staff meeting that I can no longer work for a dysfunctional agency that's compromising quality care over numbers.
Well, you
And
took an oath too. You took an oath that said do no harm. As a licensed therapist, people need to know this. I took an oath, an ethical oath that said I would do no harm. That's actually how it's worded. So
well,
they're asking you
yeah,
to go against
well,
your. It's
right. It's not that I was doing any harm. It was putting me in a stressful situation among other
Yes,
counselors that was preventing us from providing the best possible care we could.
which is harmful
Well,
to them.
yeah,
You're not doing the
yeah. I
harm.
mean, absolutely,
Yeah.
it's harmful, and not only harmful to the veterans, but it's harmful to the staff that take care of them.
Right.
It's harmful to the welfare of the staff, and that was the two main points. Those are my two main themes. These excessive and virtually unethical standards were burning us out, was compromising our welfare, and it was degrading our ability to provide quality care. So that was the mantra about this whole thing. So in January 2018, when nothing was still being done, in spite of running things through the chain of command, through these site visits, I went out with an email to Mike Fisher, the chief officer of the Readjustment Counseling Service in Washington, infoed my team locally at the Warwick Vet Center saying, look, I went through this 4 or 5 page email outlining, and it's in the book and in the references page of the website to back it up. These same points, what's going on, what people are saying, even offer recommendations on how to resolve it, and didn't respond. So a week after that, what I did is I
Hear
sent
this, everybody. Listen, this is where the good part comes in.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road. So what
That's
happened
right.
is I went out with that same email with amplifying comments. So I re-forwarded that original email to him with additional comments for his lack of response. But this time I CC'd everybody in the country, in the program, all the counselors. And as you can imagine, the fecal material hit the rotary oscillator, and that's it. All went downhill from there, in terms of the actions they started taking against me with retaliation, because I'd gone out with a survey subsequent to that. And they were telling me cease and desist from these kinds of communications, and breaking the chain of command. I wasn't breaking the chain of command. When I went out with that survey, that wasn't breaking the chain of command. That was a lateral communication among my fellow counselors. And by the way, I wasn't using government time for personal business, because this was work business. This was stuff that was affecting the program and what we were doing as counselors.
Right.
So number one, I wasn't violating the chain of command. It was lateral communication, and I wasn't violating any other thing that I shouldn't have been doing, because it wasn't breaking the chain of command. It was lateral communication and not using my computer for personal time. This was government time on a government computer, because it had to do with government work environment, business, and work related matters. Anyway, so inside of a week, I'll never forget, January 29th, it was a Monday, 2018, they shut down my computer. They denied me computer access. I therefore couldn't do progress notes. And then I'm being told, oh, well, you're going to have to do them by hand. And I had already, in giving my notice, said that I was going to be, going on terminal leave until my official retirement date. And so my original terminal leave date was like February 8th. But given this, they shut down my computer and they wanted me to do these notes by hand. I said, no, I'm just not going to do notes. You're not going to give me access to do my notes. I'm not doing notes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're hurting my ability to do my job. So I decided at that point to even leave a week earlier. So I left 2 days later. I took an extra week on top of my terminal leave, left that day, had some parting words from my director, who basically shunned me in that last staff meeting, saying that I could have closure with my peers.
Yeah.
And so on. And well, number one, she didn't give me enough time to do that before the end of the meeting. Other people were feeling very nervous because in the middle of me trying to do it near the very end with only 10 minutes to go, she starts accusing me of violating the chain of command, which is the very thing I didn't do. And I had to sit there and basically defend the fact that that was not happening. And I never had a chance to have any completion with any of my colleagues. And I left the vet center that day. And
well, they made an example of you.
Actually, I left the vet center 2 days later, when after the staff meeting.
Well, they made an example of you.
I left the following day after the staff meeting on February 1st.
Yeah, but they made an example of you. So in case anybody else was thinking of joining you,
it gets worse. It gets worse.
Yeah,
so
tell us what happened then.
And so then what happens is I'm starting to go through a process of filing complaints with the OIG, with Office of Inspector General, as well as the Office of Special Counsel because of the retaliation. I had an EEO thing I was launching, because of the retaliation and harassment and, these things that went on that they did, because right after I left, within a week, I was told not to come back to the vet center, even though I'm still an employee.
Right.
I was on terminal leave. And then I get another email threatening me if I do show up at the vet center, the police will be called, making up false allegations about things. And so this was their way of silencing me, shutting me down. This is typical standard operating procedure. Whistleblowers of America, if you go to their website or ever speak to Jackie Garrick, who's the founder and CEO of Whistleblowers of America, who I have a close relationship with because I've sat on their panel since, and we'll get into that later about the whole retaliation piece. But this whole thing, because of the nature of the betrayal, the level of the false counter accusations that were going on, painting me as a mentally unstable combat veteran, two of my colleagues, very brave souls, who really stood up and didn't run to the tall grass like everybody else. They were furious that this was going on, and they stood up with me throughout the whole process. But in the interim, that February, March, right after I left, and I'm putting together all these documents for these different federal agencies to report all this, with all this retaliation going on top of it, I was so angry and depressed and furious and enraged that I had a pulmonary embolism because of my emotional state that should have killed me. And so as subsequent to that, I ended up having to go on my own therapeutic intensive for a week in Pennsylvania, and it was very intense. And the short of that was I ended up living in the woods in the middle of that week for 4 days near the facilitator's cabin, exposed to the elements, fasting the whole time, only water. And I had to attend to a fire ceremoniously where he came out to me at all times of day and night in order to do various interventions, including dream work from dreams I was having with this family constellations, which is a way of clearing trauma and for your whole ancestral line, by the way, as part of the family constellation process. And then emotional freedom techniques, which is part of energy psychology, that is basically, acupuncture without the needles in going through a tapping sequence to clear trauma. So I was doing that, among, some shamanic healing he was doing, because he's been trained in shamanic healing medicine. So it was intense, but this, allowed me to break through my unconscious mind in a very short, quick period of time, where I was able to accomplish what I needed to accomplish that normally would have taken months or even years to do inside of a week. And it's something I needed to do because I was so desperate at that point and in such a deep and dark place that if this didn't work, I really don't know what would have happened.
And you deserved
this.
Yeah, you deserved that. And I want you to know that while you're going through this parallel, so I'm working at a veteran retreat in Virginia called Boulder Crest, and we came up with the Warrior Path program. So here's what you deserve to know. As you're seeing this going on in the vet centers and the hurt that it's causing the clients and the clinicians, I'm hearing every retreat the same thing. We don't have enough time. They can't do the work. Like, I can't trust it. It's not working. Like, I want you to know that we had thousands of men and women come through our retreat with the same hurt, the same message that you're saying right now. So I'm sitting here with goosebumps going, oh, there was someone fighting in the middle of this, which was you, trying to stop this. And I'm hearing from all of these vets that said, I can't go to the vet center. I can't go to I can't do it because it's so hurtful. I can't trust it. My therapist is not
right. So right. And to go fast forward then, so I get back on my feet. I'm starting to employ self-care techniques to, to keep me, on the right path, and, the best I could, and even while I'm being consumed, with this crusade. So eventually what happened is Senator Reid and Congressman Cicilline in Rhode Island, based on what I provided their staff, launched a Government Accountability Office investigation, a GAO investigation over a year period, that basically validated my allegations by September 20th, or by September of 2020, when they concluded their investigation. This subsequently, because of that, led to the Vet Center Improvement Act, which they allowed me to put my language in the bill through their staff. Wow. And this went on for a year and a half with a whole bunch of, legislative process stuff. And the long short of that is the Senate and the House finally passed the bill on the back as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, and Biden signed it into law by the end of this year. So basically, next steps are meeting with Congressman Cicilline and Senator Reid's staff via Zoom here in the near future to discuss oversight and who's going to be watching what to ensure the VA complies with this, as well as someone I'm working with, Tom Hall, who's part of the Vietnam Veterans of America on the legislative side in Washington, and he's prepared through the organization to do the same thing. And of course, along the way, the real story behind the story is the spiritual and emotional healing and growth I went through is really the story behind the story, which is kind of amazing, because what doesn't kill you, makes you grow stronger. And that's kind of what happened in this process. And that's a whole other, discussion for another time.
That's your second book. That's like
what I've been told.
Promises made and kept instead of promises broken. I just want everybody to know.
Right. And so I wrote a book about all this entitled Broken Promises.
That's right. And
it basically talks about these very same issues I raised, the experience I went through, the retaliation. I spend a lot of time on identifying the specific tactics, which is typical of a bureaucracy when someone speaks truth to power, to make it very clear that this is what they do, so people understand what happens to people who speak truth to power. And I also went through a lengthy, somewhat that you've already read from that, what I provided you before, the impact that it had on me and my psychosocial network. And it was devastating. And I alluded to some of that already. And so I outline that whole thing in the book, as well as the ethical breaches that occurred in depth. I addressed that and why this was unethical, the way this whole thing was done and handled, and the retaliation against me. I had local and national media interviews throughout this process, including NBC, NPR. I talk about that in the book. And in fact, on my website, and this is very important, my website that backs up the book is vabreakingpromises.com. Again, that's vabreakingpromises.com. And that's a very important website because on it, there's a references tab, which is where all of the supporting documents and references for the book are, because they're not actually in the book itself. And in that references tab, they are chronologically arranged chapter by chapter, so that everything that's in the book is backed up, is transparent. I had a legal review done of the book, which passed with flying colors to ensure that, you know, I wasn't stepping over any bounds that might come back later and be a problem with that kind of thing. And I also have a media tab that has all of my links to my media interviews, the associated web articles. So that's important, you know, for people that might want to view that. But the book ends on a positive note in that in my last chapter, I offer a blueprint on, if you're going to take on this kind of a campaign, here's how you do it. Here are the elements in order to do it successfully, in order to have the greatest effect possible with the greatest favorable outcome. You know, if you take something like this on, and it gives people hope because of the fortunate level of success I had that's pointed out. So it gives people hope and inspiration. Hey, David can beat Goliath. You can take on the system and win. And oh, by the way, here's how you do it.
Right.
And so I'm hoping, you know, one of the things I'm going to be doing here in the next week is going out with an email to all the deans to hundreds of different MSW programs in the country, and proposing that this book be a mandatory reading for policy and organizing, because it's right spot on for that type of thing, and helps people. Here's the blueprint, how to do this and do it successfully. Here are the elements you need to have working for you in order to have the same kind of success that I did.
I think it's a book for all businesses, nonprofits, because what you do in the book is you show that here's one person, here's where the administration, top down as opposed to bottom up, right? Instead of going to the therapist and saying, okay, what do you need? How do we do this better? Someone made an edict from the top that doesn't do this and didn't care. It was about money, it was about budget, it was about timing, had nothing to do with care. And so then you said something, you said, no, that's not our mission, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Here's what we said. I mean, you tried on the most basic levels to remind people what the how and why the VA was set up. And the vet center, so that they went from large to smaller. Vet centers are smaller. They're supposed to be more effective in many ways. They're supposed to have a smaller client load in terms of being able to, like a mission in the military, be able to move more quickly and to be able to do work better. And so what you did was also put out a blueprint about what you can see happening. Mm-hmm. And how you then get yourself ready for the fight. So think about this. You mm-hmm. weren't quite ready for that fight. You didn't know it was going to be so, like, you just thought, oh, I'm just going to do this because it's the right thing to do. They'll be right. Fine. They'll accept it. Right? You were like, oh, really? Like, this is what we do. And then, bam, you were slammed. So I could read that book and go, wait a minute, I better go start my therapy now.
And people don't understand what happens to people that report waste, fraud, abuse, and misconduct. They don't understand. So it's not just about the issue I raised about the compromised quality care and counselor burnout in the system. needing to be addressed, but it's the retaliation piece that's in some ways even more devastating and damaging that needs to be addressed. And in fact, one extreme example I can give you of that retaliation piece, just to drive the point home, is about 2 years ago, a colleague of mine died. I was a pallbearer at her funeral, a counselor I worked with at that vet center, a Navy nurse during the Vietnam era. Her husband was a captain in the Marine Corps in Vietnam at the time. And I went to the vet center 3.5 years after I left to drop off a memorial donation in accordance with her obituary, her last wishes. My director, Rochelle Fortin, who needs to be fired for what she did, and everyone I've talked to agrees, she shouldn't even be working with veterans doing what she did and what she did to me, just catering into the bureaucracy and having no moral courage and standing up for what I was trying to say. And she was not even there that day. The next day, she filed a fraudulent police report with the VA police that ended up getting me no trespass order against me, which could have damaged me in my license to practice, obviously, if they do background checks when I renew my license, not based in fact whatsoever. My 2 colleagues have been standing up for me along the way, oh, by the way, who also filled out interrogatories on my behalf as witnesses. And another one that day who was there when I went there said, no, none of this is true. This is insane. Yeah. And so I had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, to get this no trespass order rescinded based on proving these fraudulent claims. Never had to go to court. And the chief of police of Warwick and the town solicitor basically dropped this in a New York minute once my lawyer sent them this package, fearing they were going to be involved in a federal whistleblowing lawsuit if they don't rescind this in the New York minute. And by God, they did within 6 hours. So that goes to tell you how nervous they were about where this was going to be going. And my lawyer made that very clear. But that is important just to tell you the types of things that they will resort to and what that put me through and re-triggering things all over again. It just can't go on. So I also have, and I would, is a GoFundMe site. If you Google my name, Ted Blickwedel, GoFundMe, right away, boom, right on the internet, you'll see my GoFundMe site. And I've been trying to raise money to cover my legal expenses in this that has set me back as a consequence. So, you know, anything that can be done to get the word out, maybe even any way you see fit, not just about the book, to get the word out about the issues I'm trying to raise and to inspire people, you know, if we want to take on these kinds of campaigns, but even about the GoFundMe, in any way
we'll
that
put that up.
would be helpful.
We'll put that up when we post this. There's a long sort of written bio about you that we're going to take off in pictures, and we'll put all that up. We'll put the VA breakingpromises.com up. We'll give everybody everything that they deserve to have to support you and know you.
Yeah.
Because you're fighting for us. You're sacrificing once again as a Marine.
Right.
Or everybody else.
Yeah, because that would be very helpful. It's been a struggle. I didn't realize how hard the marketing is. It's almost as hard as the campaign I was on with the VA stuff. But anything that you feel would be appropriate to promote, you know, the book through the website and the GoFundMe link, I would greatly appreciate. Would be a big help to me. And I
want people to know that even though you see him sitting on a beach with a palm tree in the background and the ocean, that's not real. He is not on vacation. He's not taking your money and going to an island. You know, and I want to say something else. When everybody else is playing bingo at our age, and they're going on little bus tours, and I don't have anything against that. You're not doing that. You're still fighting, because once a Marine, always Marine, because you took an oath to uphold the Constitution, ethics, and to take care of your brothers and sisters. I mean, that's what you do. That's what you've done. What made them think you were going to stop doing that now? How short-sighted administrators are. I mean, I only talked to you for 5 minutes before when we first did this interview, and I'm like, who was dumb enough to take him on? There was some definitely misstep on their part. They just should have said, you know what, right? You're right, Ted. Let's just change that back. Let's just fix that. What do you have to do? My hope is that you'll be part of the new changes, that you'll be part of that new act where you're the one that's helping to keep an eye on everything. Is that possible? Will you be included in any of that?
In what now?
Well, then you
Exactly.
talked about the act, the veteran act. That
Oh, well, I did all the work.
yeah, you did do.
I'm not getting any credit.
Okay. Well, they will.
I get credit, behind the scenes. Senator Reid and Congress Cicilline, I spoke to them directly. Hey, they've acknowledged my efforts, but I have not publicly through their office been given any credit for that.
Well, it should be happening.
Well, I agree. I think it should, and
yeah,
not
will
to boast for myself,
yeah.
but it's another way, because of the retaliation, to give me some validation, frankly, that would be part of the healing process, to be honest with you.
And it would also inspire
I'm
other
not
people.
looking for fame in this, I'm not.
I understand. And it inspires people. It inspires people to do what you did, even knowing the cost. And so the more we talk about you, the more we talk about the story, the more that we put it out there, the better for everybody, not for the people who want to hide it, but for the people that want things to change, that are truly great people that care about veteran services and care about great service and support. That will help. So I want to move to a moment where we're going to put on your book and all of that. And what's next for you? Here's what I'm excited. You've been through a war that most people would never go through. You've been through the ringer. You're still young and healthy. And I mean, people would be shocked to know how old we are because we're so cute. But the point being, I know I'm not going to say anything, but the point is there's more in you. What's next? Where do you go now?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. And this is the dark side of all of this too. And I think it's important for people to realize, how severe this kind of process really is. And so along the way, I've had my dark nights of the soul. And even though this legislation has been signed into law, and I've had people say, man, you should be so proud. Look what you've accomplished. And I sit there kind of numb, kind of like, okay, well, I'm so beat up and tired, and have had to really do a lot of things to attend to my own self-care that I neglected along the way, that quite frankly, I'm so beat up and exhausted and resigned, I can't feel pride. And so if there's any pride to be felt, you're going to have to feel it for me. I mean, even to the point where it affected me so much, I don't even want to be on the planet. And I'm not saying I'm suicidal. I'm not suicidal. Yeah. I just want to be clear about that. But it had that kind of a toll. And after that kind of experience, and how people could do something like that to people that are trying to do the right thing. And even though it worked out well in terms of winning the war, well, it took its toll in a way. I just felt so resigned. I just wanted to lay down and that be the end of it. Yeah. But on the other hand, because of doing the self-care things I did, and this is one of the things I stress in being successful, in my blueprint in the last chapters, the self-care thing's critical. And that's what I failed at up front. And that got me in a lot of trouble. That's why I had to start paying attention to that. So there's part of me that doesn't want to go on to do anything. But then again, there's something in me that comes up that says, well, I've got to follow this through, as I was alluding to before, with ensuring that the VA complies with the legislation, And I mentioned the people that I'm going to be doing that with to kind of get that moving in the right direction. But the heavy lifting's done. And so from here, as I'm beginning to move on with the rest of my life, and having been trained in energy psychology, synergetic therapy, which is an adaptation to emotional freedom techniques, I would very much like to, and been thinking about at the right point, to be involved in community-based trauma relief efforts because of catastrophic events such as mass shootings or natural disasters, is going into communities with mobile teams and help, you know, set up basically a rapid response relief to have people on site to help communities and first responders and others, you know, with some of these interventions and self-taught interventions that they eventually, you know, once they learn these things, can use them for themselves, which is kind of like emotional first aid to help normalize their lives and
Sure.
you know, regulate, you know, the impact of the trauma and things like that. It's been very effective. And so I'm at the point where I'm begun to reach out to people about how to go about doing that, because it's something I can't do myself. There's a lot of moving parts involved, logistically and otherwise, and other people that have to be part of that process to do something like that. And there have been people that have done that already. And those are some of the people I have found out about through my organization. I'm part of the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, an international organization that has national conferences every year here. They promote those kinds of things, and members of the organization, some of them have done these very types of things that are internationally renowned trauma experts. So I'll just wait and see how that unfolds.
So let's do this. Let's have you back. Let's do, like, it's like you have one book. I'm sure another book will come out of you. I hope, I can only hope that there are these wonderful solutions like you're just talking about, like energy psychology, which is
Well, fortunately, I should point out, I've already taken care of that in chapter 10 of my book, because I also call out the VA. Why are these interventions not offered to veterans at the VA when they are evidence-based, and you are neglecting our veterans from having some of the best interventions available out there today to deal with this stuff? And I summarize the research on this stuff. And I point out some websites that people can go to, the ACEP, for instance, and because that's kind of a one-stop shop. So fortunately, I had the cognizance to include that in the book as well.
Because you always want a solution from a problem, right? Why would you just complain about a problem and not say, and here's the solution, here's what we can be doing? So what we'll do is we'll have you back, and let's just deal with energy psychology. Let's just look at this new idea that you have, this possible new mission. Like, let's just focus on that. I'm excited about that. I'm a huge believer. You know, we have 7 to 10 feet of energy coming off our heart. That's what we have. You can measure that, right? So we know that, and we go, oh, yeah, of course, there's many. We don't think about it being able to be utilized, and it's all through our body. And yet it is. You said it very well in one of the articles. You said, you know, we only do therapy with your mind and your feelings, your thoughts and your feelings, right? When in fact, your whole body is part of everything that you do. Well, a horse, just so you know, has 30 feet of energy coming off their heart. 30 feet. There's research that says if you stand next to a horse for a certain amount of time and you're really appreciating, to start breathing, it'll lower your blood pressure. Think about that. What's that going to do to big pharma if all of a sudden we just have people standing next to horses? But I tell you all of this because we absolutely have to have a mental health evolution. You're a mental health evolutionary. And I say that with all due respect. We need disruptors. Mental health started with drilling holes in people's heads to let the demons out. Thank God.
And if you want, and this is certainly something we could do, but you may even want at some point with me or beyond me or whatever, people that are, really key people in this organization that are key researchers and practitioners themselves. And although I can speak to this, and I have, there's things that they can articulate even
And we'll have
more
them on
so,
too. We'll add them to the
being more
mix.
experienced than me. So I don't know exactly what you want to do with that, but we can talk about that offline, and then we can decide, who we might want to bring in the mix to be part of this discussion.
Perfect. I love
Because
it. And so
David
appreciative.
Feinstein and Dawson Church,
Mhm.
Dawson's out your way. He's an international researcher, practitioner, keynote speaker, many of our conferences. David Feinstein, same thing. He's in Portland, Oregon. These two guys, and David was very supportive of me. In fact, he wrote a review for my book that's in the inside first couple pages.
That's awesome.
He and I've had a number of discussions over the last few years, but him and Dawson in 2010 went to Washington. He calls it the Magical Mystery Tour, trying to talk to congressmen, senators, getting stonewalled by their staff, and then by happenstance running into somebody from his district and said, "Oh, come on in." They ended up testifying before the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, and to promote this. And then congressmen subsequent to that wrote letters to the VA secretary, which were blowing off. And I've got copies of those records, of those letters. In fact, that's part of my references from my book in chapter 10 as well. And so these are two guys, one or both, whichever one would definitely be appropriate, because Dawson has established in that other packet I gave you about something you might want to include for your resources. If you go through that material, I addressed this thing called stress solution. And that's something Dawson was part of and got that going, free EFT for veterans. And they've helped over 22,000 veterans already. So, so as a segue as to, here Ted has been on to talk about this, going into energy psychology, or here are two guys who are backing up Ted, trying to do the same thing he was doing that Ted was addressing in his book in chapter 10 that these guys tried to do before that. In fact, I gave them credit for that in chapter 10 by name as well. But they can take things to a level more articulately than I can in certain things, or certain questions you might have that you might want to have addressed. So I could contact either one or the both of them that this is something you felt you wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely.
I could possibly reach out to them and have at least one of them on with me, or both of them on with me, and do a three-way gig.
Oh, this has been just wonderful. And sometimes you don't get apologies from the people that hurt you. A lot of times you don't, and that's from parents all the way, to partners and coworkers. And I'm an adult, and I'm an ethical adult, and I'm also a bit of a disruptor like you. I can apologize to you. I can look you in the eye, Ted, and say, what happened to you was wrong. They were wrong 100%, and I'm sorry that they did this. I can apologize. It doesn't have to be me that did it. I can still apologize, because you deserve that. You deserve that apology, and they were wrong. And now we get to decide what we're going to do with you now. How do we help you? That GoFundMe, this new mission in your life, because you have been a man in the service of service. And there's no way that we can lose you now. We still need you. I don't know if you know, there's still a lot of shit out there that needs to be fixed and helped, and a lot of veterans that deserve you. So I
might have to come out and your way and have a retreat with you and your horses before all that.
Best. I want to teach you how to gentle. I'm going to teach you how to gentle a wild horse. I'm going to put you in a 60-foot round pen with a wild horse that thinks you're going to eat it, and a helmet. I'll give you a helmet. And you're going to have the time of your life having that horse understand that your energy and your thoughts, feelings, and actions are one, and you are safe. And I guarantee you it's one of the most amazing healing experiences ever when that horse finally allows you to touch it. It's pretty amazing. So that's what I do for fun on the side. That's my weekend fun.
That's what I gathered. That's why I said that.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to come out and do that. All right. I know we're out of time, and I just again want to thank you, everybody. We're going to put so much information in the when we post this that you'll be able to download all of this and get this information. Please, please continue to follow Ted. Give him your support physically, emotionally, intellectually, and financially. He deserves it. He's fought a fight for our veterans at a great cost. And I personally want to thank you for that, everybody. And just remember, even you now, Ted, you are definitely crazy well. There's no question about that after talking with you now. So continue to be crazy well. And the theme song was written by Kalvin Love, and it's called Be Your Best Self. And I'm so grateful that he gave me that song to be able to have his.
And could you send me a link to the podcast when that?
Oh, we will.
happens?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll tag you in it and everything. The people at Coming Home Well are just the best producers.
And when might this occur?
Next Monday. It'll come up this coming Monday.
Oh, so sometime after Monday, you can send me a link to the podcast?
So she'll promote it on Sunday with a little link, a little a snippet, and then Cindy will post it on Monday.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're like you. We don't wait around. We like get shit done. Let's go. Move on. We're from Massachusetts. We're from New England. All right. I wish you a nice cup of hot Dunkin' Donuts coffee today. Stay warm, stay well, and we will talk soon. Bless you, Ted. We're so grateful.
Well, thank you, Suzi. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.